As it exposes many faults with the church, it also exposes many false lies spread about the church, including scripture, and also has information on the Masonic infiltration. This is located within the Christian Book of Truth, which is chapter 13, found in the book Faith and Knowledge to Overcome Addiction, Salvation for the individual struggling with the higher power concept of recovery. Now, onto the documentary. The leader of the church, of the world's largest religion, though the Pope is a Freemason. The last two have been, but yet that's not allowed in the Catholic Church. This new Pope travels the world trying to convince governments to donate into the CERN project. Just what really is going on at the Vatican? Let the documentary begin. YouTube is full of documentaries accusing the Catholic Church of misleading its people and the whole world, of being truly a satanic organization, not Christian. In addition, we hear of this organization being infested with pedophilia, of its violent history which led to minimal human progress throughout the Middle Ages prior to the so-called Enlightenment period, which we celebrate so much in America and Europe. A period where new philosophies and sciences were combined with the primary inventions of electricity and the gas engine, building the industrial age and altering the landscape of almost every corner of the world. Anyhow, some of these assumptions are partly true, but the history of the church taught to our people, particularly the younger generation, is almost entirely false. For example, we know there are pedophilia priests, but are they Catholics or members of a secret brotherhood where this behavior is taught and encouraged? Any organization which grows too big will drift away from its foundation and may feel the need to implement more rules to control its growing populace, especially when the populace involves disparate languages and customs. This happened with the church, as the spirituality taught by Jesus gave way to religion. Nevertheless, the current errors of today cannot be linked to the church's past history. Errors being committed by Freemasons and Jesuits who aren't even allowed by Catholic dogma to be members of the church, never mind bishops, cardinals, and popes. This infiltration began in the Enlightenment era, and what many don't know is we have 250 years of documented infiltration attempts by the Freemasons to take over Vatican City. Once the church lost its power, the common folk lost its mediator to the noble class, and all forms of torture returned and new ones were born. This was the so-called Enlightenment period, but many fell, met their fate in dark dungeons and guillotine beheadings. Christianity undoubtedly prevented war, unlike the new generations are taught in America. There's absolutely no debate about this fact. The armies of Europe would mostly march, perform strategic maneuvers, and let some pop shots from great distances. When the other armies retreated, there was no chasing them. Militaries were used for the noble families to send their sons to become decorated soldiers, mostly without even engaging in battle. Sure, they were knighted. They were given armor and horses that the common folks had to march in the grounds, but they weren't placing themselves in these positions to be dedicated at giving their lives for the kings or for the countries. Nonetheless, when the monarchs and aristocrats, the Freemasons, usurped power, there was war on scales never dreamed of before, and I haven't even gotten to the First World War, where tens of millions of Christians would lose their lives. The American Civil War carried on for 5 years, and roughly 630,000 men lost their lives. This figure was unthinkable to Europeans throughout the 1,000-year reign of the Church. Here we can view a hideous display newly built within the walls of Vatican City, as the heretically titled Vicar of Christ sits just in front of it. This demonic background fits a horrific version of Jesus, apparently rising out of hell alongside numerous evil entities. Another new monument is the Pinecone statue. This pinecone represents the mind's eye, otherwise known as the third eye, or as the Masons say, the all-seeing eye, which is our method of contacting the demonic realm. The image of a pinecone has commonly been utilized to represent this mysterious eye, as it can be witnessed as far back as in Sumerian and Egyptian paintings and rock carvings. The human pineal gland, which appears in similar design to that of a pine cone, is located within the center of the human brain, and it's this gland which is believed to be our third eye. Although, one aspect of this comparison which many fail to realize when considering the ancients' knowledge of this gland is the fact in which the pineal gland, which derives its name from the pine cone, only appears like such when placed under a high-powered microscope, something we've always believed, or at least have always been taught, was something ancient humans had not invented yet. Humanus Genus was written by Pope Leo XIII in 1884. To read this book, simply go to the Redeeming Truth Free Library online. Pope Leo XIII was extremely worried about the Masonic infiltration attempts. Within this he writes, "The Roman pontiffs, our predecessors, watching constantly over the safety of the Christian people, early recognized this capital enemy rushing forth out of the darkness of hidden conspiracy, anticipating the future in their mind, gave the alarm to princes and people that they should not be caught by deceptions and fraud." Clement VII first signalized this danger in 1738 with his Constitution of the Church. Therefore, we have 250 years of documented infiltration attempts by Freemasonry before they were able to fully take over the Catholic Church. After Clement VII, Pope Benedict VII renewed his constitution and spoke out. Pope Pius VII then followed them both. And of course there was Leo XIII, who acted upon this beholden position outlined in the Apostolic Constitution titled Quo Graviola, recapitulating the acts and decrees of the previously mentioned pontiffs concerning the threats of Freemasonry. In the same outspoken manner were the additional popes, Pius VIII, Gregory XVI, and Pius IX, who was possibly the most outspoken on this matter. Pope Leo XIII and Pope Pius IX forced into publication a book titled Alta Vendita in 1864. On behalf of this text being placed into print, everyone could see the Masons' plans for the destruction of the church. Because the Alta Vendita was a blueprint, if you will, with instructions and future plans for how the Masons could be successful completing their infiltration of Vatican City and ultimately installing Lucifer at its helm. This blueprint-type book is much alike the works of Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike, which outlines a Masonic plan to establish the New World Order. Albert Pike was a Confederate general and leader in the Ku Klux Klan. He's also the most venerated Freemason in American history, with the possible exception of Washington or Hamilton, perhaps some others who became president. But it's Albert Pike whose tomb is surrounded within the confines of the head Masonic Lodge of the United States, located in the heart of Washington, D.C. Alta Vendita was the name of a Masonic lodge where these documents were obtained. Additionally, a French cardinal, Creighton O'Jolly, published some of these same Masonic documents obtained by the Vatican in his book, the Roman Church facing the Revolution. 26 years later, in 1885, Monsignor George Dillon published an English translation of these documents in his book, Grand Orient Freemasonry Unmasked, as the secret power behind communism. Saint Maximilian Kolbe, who in his writings tears apart the Freemasons, accusing them of being mere footstools for the Jews to subjugate all of Christendom and ultimately enslave the entirety of the world. Kolbe frequently mentions Zionist writings in his own, where they vowed to turn their backs on their so-called Gentile Masons, their brothers, when the time is right, and further ridicule the lower-ranked Gentile Masons who fail to notice the agenda they are progressively working towards. One day before the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, in 1917, where 289 Bolshevik Jews connected to Masonic lodges left their asylum in New York City, receiving funds from Wall Street to install communism in Russia, where immediately 200,000 church clergy of the Eastern Orthodox Christian Church were murdered, many by crucifixion. Now, many peoples who refused to give up Christianity were sent to gulags or starved to death. But anyhow, on this day, St. Maximilian Kolbe witnessed with his own eyes the Freemasons march through St. Peter's Square. On this day, in 1917, they were celebrating their bicentennial, but they had a further agenda, a bold proclamation, as they held banners which read, "Hail Satan." Another contained the words, "Satan must reign in the Vatican. The Pope will be his slave." Sadly, most Catholics have no perception of the practices committed within the walls of the Vatican by the hands of this Masonic Brotherhood. The Catholic churches throughout America do not engage in any of this behavior that's going on in Vatican City. But in the city, there's many reports, including escaped children from self-professed Illuminati families, on multiple incidents who knew each other not, and occurring in separate years of satanic ceremonies which include child sacrifice underneath St. Peter's Basilica. On a lesser level, these unknown Catholics blindly accept changes made by the Church, under the understanding it's the Catholic hierarchy imploring such decisions, such as the Catholic Masses. The unfortunate truth is, ever since really 1958, but officially 1962, when the Vatican II Council was officialized, what's come to be known as Vatican II, all the alterations of Catholicism has been made by Satan through his earthly workers, a sect of Masons, atheists, and Jews. In 1926, Father Kolbe wrote an article to the non-Jewish heritage Masons at the time of the International Congress of Freemasonry in Bucharest. The Night of the Immaculate was the title. Within these pages, it reads, "These men, the Freemasons, believe that they are the ones who rule everything. But let us hear what is written in the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. Protocol N11 states, quotes, we will create and put in effect the laws and the governments in opportune moments by means of national rebellions. What we want is that the multitudes be disoriented by revolt, still in condition of terror and uncertainty. They should understand that once and for all, we are so strong, so untouchable, so powerful that in no way will we ever take into account their opinions and wishes. Instead, we are ready and able to crush with irresistible power their manifestations at any moment and in every place. Then, in fear and trembling, they will close their eyes to everything and await the consequences." Also, here, we see another writing as they admit deceiving their lower ranks. And this too, Father Kolbe put in his writing addressing the Masons. It says, by the Jewish Masons, quotes, "For what purposes have we created this policy and insinuated into the minds of Masons without giving them any possibility of examining its underlying meaning. This is what has served as the basis of our secret organization of Masonry, whose existence is not known or even expected by these cattle, attracted by us into the army of Masonic lodges. Here, Maximilian Kolbe directs himself to the Masons, saying, in his own words now, "Freemasons, did you hear this? The Hebrews, who have secretly organized and secretly direct you, consider you as beasts, recruited into Masonic lodges for ends that you neither know nor suspect. Are you aware, Freemasons, of what awaits those among you who will begin to think for themselves? Is it not better to serve the Creator with interior peace rather than to obey the orders of those who hate you?" Further, ridiculing their own kind. In another article of 1926, Father Maximilian Kolbe again cites the protocols and wrote, "They say for themselves who are in what position to overthrow an invisible force, and this is precisely what our force is. Gentile Freemasonry only serves as a screen for us and our objectives, but our plan of action will always remain unknown to the people."